Mike, how are we doing today?
Doing great, Frank. Welcome back to Perspective Shift Studios.
It is good to be back.
It is great to be back.
Yeah.
Happy Easter to everybody. We hope everyone had a great Easter yesterday.
Yeah.
Spend some time with some family, some friends.
Yeah.
The Pope died.
The Pope died.
The Pope
Yeah,
died
didn't
last
he-
night or this morning.
Yeah, I just found out. So,
I saw it this morning. It came. I got one of those alert texts,
Yeah.
news notifications at 1:38 a.m. I
All
woke
right.
up and I saw it on my phone and I was like, "Holy crap!"
oh, really?
Yeah,
I
on
didn't-
Easter.
You had a direct route to the Pope?
I did.
I
Well,
didn't
he was
get-
a
I-
Jesuit. I was taught by Jesuit priests.
Yeah,
so-
I didn't get a text from him.
I heard directly
I
from
guess-
my sources
I
in the
guess-
Vatican.
He was busy. So.
Pretty symbolic, though.
Yeah.
You know, with everything, we're going through a lot of changes right now. A lot's coming out. A lot's falling away. People are waking up. So I think it's very symbolic what we're going through at the moment.
I think that's what happens. Like when you're in this field, like obviously a lot of people are like what we call waking up. What's waking up? Becoming aware of the patterns in which we lived life before are no longer correlating with the life we're living today. And that's kind of where a jarring or a little disturbance comes from. But if you understand the physics of things, of the downward heading, like moving downward, actually, if you embrace that, you come out of the other side higher.
Yep, like a ramp.
So the discomfort of going down, if you actually welcome that, the joy of coming up is what we experience. So depending on where you are in your journey, everyone's in this, in the physical world, is what goes up must come down in the physical world. But as we start to look at it differently, why is going down bad? It's a misinterpretation of what's going on. But in the beginning, because, so to speak, if you're going down like a roller coaster, your stomach will come up into your throat, right? Like, why is that bad? Well, it's a uncomfortable feeling. But once you've been on roller coasters many times, it now generates excitement. So that's what's happening. There's a shift happening in the world. And there's always been shifts happening in the world. It's not like we always want to claim, oh, it's the best time to be alive. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure the people said that all the time. Like the best time to be alive was when Jesus was around, or Buddha, and Muhammad. I'm like, there is no better time than now. It can't. That's
There is
all
no
that really,
other time than now.
there is no other time than now. So, some are struggling with this change, and some are actually excited for the change, and some are just,
Along for the ride.
along for the ride. And I find myself in one of those fields, just along for the ride. I'm not waiting for something to happen in order to be happy. I'm not looking at my life and saying, oh, I'm happy because I have all this stuff in front of me. It's just, I'm learning to let go of what has to happen. And it's kind of like when you let go on a roller coaster, you just enjoy the whole thing,
Yeah.
It's like going on a roller coaster without even knowing about the roller coaster, right?
That's definitely what life is.
Yeah, just walk there. Like, don't read up on the roller coaster.
Go into it with no expectation,
Yeah.
and you'll find yourself.
Yeah, and that becomes the understanding of going into this world is like there's power within the field of paradox. So when we start to realize everything that we think we need to know and we let go of it, we'll come to know that in the findings or the experience, because prior to knowing through the experience, it's just intellectual jargon, right? Now, the people that experience it are the ones spewing out the intellectual jargon, and it's because they want you to get to the precipice of doing it. So it becomes jargon? I'm like, no, it's actually gives you the ability, because if someone didn't explain certain things to me, would I have came to the edge to jump off? Yeah, so they're explaining it brilliantly in the way I heard it at the time, allow me to go close to then jump off the cliff, so to speak, in order to experience what they were talking about. And that's kind of what we do here, like perspective shift. This is just intellectual jargon, but we also want to get you close to having the experience of what it is we're actually talking about. And I believe most of you guys out there listening had experience like this. Now this just keeps replicating. There's always a higher roller coaster. There's always a different type of ride to go on. But what we start to understand is none of it's necessary. Because in every field that we're in, we'll always have a connection to God, whether we're here in the fourth dimension or 3-dimension, one of time, fourth dimensions, or the fifth dimension, sixth, whatever it is. All of them have connection to God, but each dimension will have its own different experience. And I can't explain the fifth dimension with my fourth dimensional mind, and nor do I try to even, anticipate what's going to happen.
Well, that's the thing. It's like trying to explain the unexplainable.
Yeah.
And as soon as you go to label it, or as soon as you go to explain it, it's gone.
Yeah, and for those out there trying to explain, have fun doing that. It's kind of like explaining, trying to talk about what may or may not happen because you had some insight. So you had this little insight of what's going to happen. So one could say, okay, we're heading to fifth dimension. Okay, there could be truth to that. But then trying to explain the fifth dimension to me, it's like trying to explain what pizza tastes like to someone who's never eaten pizza. I'm like, yeah, go for it. Good luck, I'm like, try that. But knowing what our future outcome is going to be is what allows me to stay in the present moment, so to speak. And that's kind of like it's presetting the understanding of, what does Neville Goddard say? Assume the feeling of wish already fulfilled.
Assume the wish fulfilled.
And it's not we have to let go of the idea of what that's going to look like. And what I mean is I've learned this years ago without using those terms, but when I was worried or bothered, somebody would say to me, in 100 years, kid, this won't matter.
Yeah. In 5 years. Shit.
So that's assuming, the assumption was I know I'm not going to be alive to even worry about this stuff. So I assume the feeling of not being here would allow me to actually be here without the worry.
I see.
And that's the brilliance of it. So that's where the paradox comes in. So someone could say, okay, in 5 years, you're going to be successful. I'm like, well, how do you define success? How do you define that? But I know in 100 years, I'm going to be gone from this corporeal setting. The internal part of me, the I am, will never die. That's the witness of what's going on. So that allows me, what's left in 100 years? What's left of me? It's that I am. Why aren't I seated in the I am now? Why am I waiting for 100 years? And that all of a sudden life becomes enjoyable. It becomes amazing. Doesn't matter what's happening in the outside world. All right.
It's funny how that works.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And we all know this. Anyone that's been striving for something or what have you, and they lost a loved one, they let that go right away. It brings them to a present moment. But we can do that without any what we call tragedy or things to happen. Sometimes I'll say in my head, well, if this ever happened, I would just, get all my money out of the bank and travel the world. I'm like, well, why aren't you doing that now? Why are you waiting for this particular thing to happen? Why are you waiting for retirement? Why are you waiting for this? All right. Now, I might have just had a preview of what is my future, but I'm not going to sit and think about it right now. Yeah. So
otherwise it'd be in front of you.
Yeah. But at the same time, is it a preview or is it I want to do this now, but all these other beliefs that I have are disallowing from doing it now? And so that's kind of this episode we're going to talk about is asking the question, why? Very few of us do that. Why do I need this? Why do I need that? We're not here to say don't. We're not here for denouncing it. But why? What about this do I need or I want? Because it could be two things. Thinking if I have this thing, I'll be happier. Or the other thing could be you're previewing into your future that this is going to come about. But from the moment of it happening and from the moment of here, let go of this, but hold on to the feeling and watch what happens in between. So you have to discern which one it is. Is it, I need this to be happy? I'm like, if that's the truth, ask yourself if that's the case, well, let it go because it'll never make you happy. More money will just make you more comfortable. Another lover will just give you something to do on a Saturday night or Friday night or whatever. That's all that will do. All right? You only can make yourself happy because where does happiness happen? It happens if you want to get scientific, it happens in the neurons in your body, in the heart, and the electromagnetic field. When the heart opens up, we feel that way. But if I need another person to open up my heart, then that person controls me.
You're putting it on the outside world.
Yeah.
My happiness is contingent upon, the outside world.
But you can have a preview of, say, an individual or a business or whatever in that's going to happen. But once you do that, you have to let go of that and watch it. And like, oh my God, they showed up. That was then part and parcel of your story, rather than discerning the two. Because there is a huge discernment here. That's what people. Because if I knew, like, if I was doing a movie and they gave me a little, like, okay, in this scene you're gonna be doing this scene, but we're gonna work on this scene first. But a couple scenes from now you're gonna be over here. Like, okay, we'll have to let go of that in order to perform this scene. But I don't worry about it because the director told me we're gonna be doing that. The director already gave me. So this synchronicity that happens when these ideas happen, that's like the director saying, okay, in 5 scenes from now, we're going to be here. All right? But I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can stop thinking about it because I know it's coming. But if I keep thinking about it, it means I don't trust the director that it's going to show up. And guess what happens is these scenes get dragged out because he keeps cut. What's going on? What are you doing? It doesn't mean it's still filming, but instead of taking 50 takes, I could take 1 take or 2 takes. Right? So, and there's something natural about something in us humans in this 3-dimensional, 1 of time, 4 dimensions, equal, with time, that is efficient, that wants to be more efficient. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's the brilliance of it. Like, years ago I would have to meditate for like 2 hours to find God, and now I could just close my eyes and find God. And I'm like, and then, well, maybe I could just find God without closing my eyes. You know what I'm saying? And so you play around with the efficiency of your life, and then you find out, like, oh, I thought I was really efficient, but I'm not, because my wife told me I could be doing better.
Told me I could be doing better.
You could be quicker at that. And you start to play this, it's kind of like a game, but it's a worthwhile game. But yeah.
It's like you're learning it's like you're learning your instrument. It's kind of how I would say it, It's learning the instrument and understanding what this corporeal self, this experience, what it is, learning how emotions work, learning what the nervous system is, and getting into that, zone that we're talking about. It's like tuning the instrument. Yeah,
but then the intricacy of playing, like Mike plays guitar, I play guitar, and anyone else plays an instrument or anything, whether it's a sport or writing, it doesn't matter. There is this moment where, like, you're playing a chord. I've learned this, say, like an E chord. I've learned it many, 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 many years ago. One of the first chords I've ever learned.
Yeah.
And I still try to perfect it.
Yeah.
Like there's anyone that's done it, you still try to perfect it. There's no perfecting it. There's none.
And how lightly you hit the strings versus how hard.
Yep. And also change the tonality. It never ends. It never ends. I could play the same song my whole life and it'll never end. It tends to drive my wife nuts, but it just never ends. She's like, can you play something else? Honey, I'm trying to master this. Don't you realize it? He's like, can you master it somewhere else?
I think you should share that. Is that a parable? The story we were talking about this morning off air. I love that story about the multi-generational family living together. I think this is a cool little starting point for us.
Yeah, and this has to do with questioning what we're doing. Not to denounce what we're doing, but to question. Most people don't question what we're doing. So I was telling Mike the story that there's a family, they're, say it's a holiday. Say it's, Easter, right?
There you go.
And there's 4 generations, within this household. And so this young girl comes up, she's like 8 years old, and she notices there's a ham that the mom cuts in half and puts half in the oven, puts the other half back in the refrigerator. And the mom, the 8-year-old goes, Mom, why do you take a full ham, cut it in half, and only, bake half the ham? And the mom's like, well, honey, sweetie, that's what we've always done. Well, you can go ask your grandmother. So the 8-year-old goes to the grandmother and says, hey, Grandma, why do we take a whole ham, cut it in half, and only cook half the ham? She said, well, sweetie, that's kind of what we always done. But if you want, great-grandmother's still here. So the 8-year-old goes to great-grandmother and says, great-grandma, why do you buy a whole ham, cut it in half, and only bake half the ham? And the great-grandma goes, well, back in my day, we only had a pan that can house half the ham. So at some point, all these things that we follow had some bit of logic to it, some reasoning to it, but we've moved from there. Now, it may
not be applicable today.
Yeah, you can carry that ceremony by cutting half the ham and only baking half the ham, have a ceremonial aspect, but understanding where it came from is imperative there, rather than just like, no one's told me.
Just doing it to
Just
do
doing
it.
it.
Going through the
Yeah.
motions.
Again,
like
so
a
there's
lot of
nothing
us are.
wrong. Yeah, so cut the ham in half and put the other half in the refrigerator and bake the other ham. And it's kind of like going to a point where it's like, okay, I'm like, this is what great grandma had to put up with type of thing. So let's do it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's just kind of, but if you understand it, you're not pulled into it. You're not pulled into the, back then it was efficiency or that's all they had. Now it would be considered to be lack. All right. But again, there's nothing wrong with that. But we're here to ask the question, why?
Exactly.
And once we come up with the answer, you don't say, well, that's ridiculous. Like, well, that doesn't apply now. We could cook the whole ham. And again, if you still want to cut half the ham and put it in there, there's nothing wrong with that either. But just knowing why.
And we can apply this story to so many things in our day-to-day lives, just how we operate in, society today. There are so many things we just do without even asking or just because, that's the way I was taught.
Yeah. Like even if you listen to the show, why are you listening to the show? Like ask that question, why? And that will bring you to, if you don't ever ask the question why, you're going to jump from this to that, to that, to that. And eventually you're going to ask why, because you're going to be so filled with information, but the information isn't, it's drowning you rather than elevating you. All right. So information shouldn't be gained from another individual. Like you have your own source of information.
If somebody shares something, it may resonate. That tells you, I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
But the moment you start putting it outside of you, well, now you're just putting whoever, he, she, the whatever person on a pedestal saying, this is, the end all be all. And the whole trick is to come back home.
Yeah.
Come back to the heart, come back to self.
Like we were just talking about this earlier, but like when I was, when I first started playing guitar, I was probably like, 14 years old. And for me, it was all about Eddie Van Halen. And so I remember playing that, and that's all I wanted to learn. But I remember it was one point when my guitar teacher said, it's like, you got to learn to play your own stuff because we don't need another Eddie Van Halen. And by the way, you're nowhere near Eddie Van Halen. So
Thanks.
You better go down a different road there, kiddo.
Thanks, buddy.
And it's true. You have to find your own song.
Yep.
So Eddie Van Halen led me to play the guitar, but then I had to find my own playing style. And so I had to let go of that trying to be like Eddie in order to do that, because we don't need another Eddie. Yeah, it's cool at a party to, play Eruption and something like that, but it's like it's been done before. It's like, what are you playing? What are you giving out into the world? That's why you came here. So, yeah, having, in my case, like an Eddie Van Halen, that what I use the excuses drew me to the guitar, but then as life is many, many years later, I'm like, wow. I'm glad that happened, but that's not the reason. I didn't come here to, the music I love playing is nowhere near the style of Eddie Van Halen now, by the way, but it still led me to this place. And I'm sure Eddie Van Halen had the same experience where he had to come into his own. Like, I think Eric Clapton was his guitar hero, amongst other people, but yet when you listen to Eric Clapton and Eddie Van Halen, I'm like, I don't see it. I'm like, well,
totally different.
Yeah, it's totally different. And that's why we came here. So, listen to our show or listen to Ram Dass or something like that. Yeah, but you want to become the Ram Dass in your life, in your world. You want to become the Mike in your world.
Correct.
The Mike Kittless in your world.
But truly, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. And the more we actually become our individual, the better this field of energy works. But again, I'm not waiting for everyone to wake up in order for me to be happy. That is up to my nervous system. And by doing stuff like meditation, breathing, working out, all these other things, I realize there's a correlation with this. And then prior to going into a breath work, can I assume the feeling of what it would feel like after the breath work would be done? And I can. And all of a sudden I'm like, I don't need to do breath work. But I'll still probably do it though.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
It's like, how do I go right directly to it without actually doing...
And we all have that ability.
Yeah, because when I do something like breath work or meditation, that's an indirect way to God. The direct way is understanding it's non-duality. And I could just, boom, sit right there.
The trick, the real trick is seeing that is our most natural state.
Yeah.
It's always there. It's always been there. We have the ability to access it at any time. And it's these stories it's these conditions, it's these I have to do this, that, the blah blah blah. It's all this head chatter that's actually keeping that state away from us. Yeah. So we use the modalities, the meditation, the breath work, this to quiet the overactive mind, the chatter, the notifications on the phone, the never-ending to-do list, in order to get back to our state that never leaves us.
Yeah.
And so it's weird. It's like this state that's always there, and we cover it up, we complicate it, and then when we try to uncomplicate it, through different modalities.
Yeah, it's brilliantly said. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, because we also don't want to become addictive to those things. But
no, because then we're giving the power to those things.
Yeah, I'd rather you become addictive to meditation and breath work than to, say, a substance like alcohol or what have you.
Yeah, exactly.
But nonetheless, I was listening to somebody just the other day talking about every one of us is addictive. Our addiction is to be seated with God. All right. So how do we use that? Like, the drug addict that's doing some type of opioid is trying to remain with God. The problem there is it doesn't last. Well, we have the same addiction. Like, why don't we last there? Because if I was always there, I probably wouldn't have a podcast talking about it. I'd be just blissed out somewhere.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm like, okay, we're in the three-dimensional world. So, like, I want to, it's kind of like practicing guitar. I'm like, well, now I'm going to play it live and put myself in a position. And you do that, you can practice whatever. Then there becomes a point where I just want to step into the unknown with a bunch of other musicians that I've never even met and just, boom, see what happens. Just like literally enter into that field and, like kind of like an open mic night where you just stop playing, where I never practice people, but you realize there's this field of energy that's already set and I could go into it and tie into that. I'm like, And for me, that's that moment right now. Is there something greater? Now I'm like, yeah, to the point where you don't even need to play to have this. Mm-hmm. But there's nothing wrong with that. So wherever you are on your journey is exactly where you're supposed to be, other than thinking you're supposed to be somewhere else, is the little funny lie, or what I call the hidden camera.
Yeah, the hide
trick,
and seek.
The hide and seek. I'm like, no.
It's true. We're all walking around thinking we ought to be here.
Yeah.
Or this isn't right. You know? And it's actually the thought that something isn't right is the problem. It's not the state you're in.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this worldly here on Earth is all about. Because I was talking to Mike earlier about this, but what I've been doing for a little while, and I do it more lately, it's just kind of like to play around with people. I'm like, we start talking, I'm like, we live in a crazy world. And I was like, yeah, we do. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, why? I'm like, how do we know it's crazy? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, how do you know it's crazy? And like, we know it's crazy, but maybe they haven't intellectually discovered why it's crazy. I'm like, why? Like, okay, we all know it's crazy. So therefore, why is it crazy? Mm-hmm. I'm like, maybe this is the way it's supposed to be. But there's something seated in us that isn't in it. The I am that knows this is crazy, but crazy fun.
Mm-hmm. That's the awareness.
Yeah. But my character might it knows it's crazy, but it's trying to change the craziness and make it to non-crazy. And I'm like, but then you just create another crazy character, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. It's like, and guess what? When we watch TV, who are the characters that you attract to more? The more of the crazier ones that stand out, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like, look at all the people, even, like everyone from Jesus, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, they all stood out. Moses, they stood out. Mm-hmm. So we're attracted to them. You watch Batman. Okay, you think you're going to be watching Batman, but all of a sudden Heath Ledger ended up in one of the stories of Batman, and all of a sudden now the Joker's who we're following, right? Because he created this really amazing character, and then Joaquin Phoenix like, hey, let me do that. Let me try to do that. Where before,
let me show you my version.
The Joker was kind of like just a character, but Batman was standing out. And I remember Christian Bale when he was doing lines with Heath Ledger, and he's like, and this is one of the greatest actors ever live is Christian Bale, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to compete with it. Like,
hell yeah.
And he's, so he just played with it, and all of a sudden Heath Ledger took over that,
awesome.
But the movie's called Batman. So, and it's not that like Heath Ledger says, I'm going to overpower Christian Bale. It wasn't that. He came there to play this role, and I think, it made Christian Bale a better Batman for it.
Exactly.
Right?
And
he'll tell you that story. Yeah. So it's like, oh, this is interesting. So the characters that stand out, the ones, and that's what we're attracted to. So we're somewhat attracted to crazy,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
or
Absolutely.
the norm. So why are we trying to then fit into this outside world? Well, don't do the opposite just out of happenstance. Like, that's how you become the black sheep. Well, you stand out because of black sheep, but is it helping you? Is it helping society? All right. There's another way to but the goal is not to stand out, but not to fit in. And, because it's easy to stand out, but is it helping you? Is it helping the world?
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are discernments we have to ask ourselves. Because I can go in the middle of the street, take my clothes off, and shoot a gun in the air.
Yeah, you definitely.
I'll be on the news real quick.
You definitely will be.
Yeah, I feel. Yeah.
But the reason is the story of the ham. Going back to it,
Yep.
Which is we take these ideas of this is what happiness is, or this is what success looks like, or this is what a family looks like, or this is just what I'm supposed to be doing. So many people are living their life just because this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people out there that have the monetary wealth and are drowning in it because they bake the ham and whatever, and they're looking at it and like, why is this? I'm like, well, you never question. Like when you watch somebody that had this thing and now you got to the point where you have it, maybe surpassed them monetarily, did you ever even ask them if this makes them happy?
Exactly.
You just assumed it did because,
That's what you were told. Yeah. This is what you saw.
Yeah, when I was younger, when you would see like celebrities on the red carpet, they were always smiling. Mm-hmm. And then because of social media and a plethora of photographers came out, you realize, man, they would show the guy or the girl on the beach just hanging out and they weren't like in a photo shoot and they're like, oh my God, they look like an everyday person or look, they have a hangover. Yeah. Like, oh look, they
look unhappy.
They look unhappy. Yeah. Oh look, they're fighting with their spouse. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I do that.
What's that thing? That magazine? The stars are just like us.
The Inquirer.
Yeah. Well, they have like those scenes where it's like they specifically talk about how the stars are just like us, as if it's something different. That went on, a long time. Back in the 90s and whatnot.
Yeah, and we start to and it's because we started questioning. Now, it wasn't here to demean these people that are acting. It's not their fault that they were propped up at a red carpet to make it look like they were elitist. Mm-hmm. It was we wanted that. Mm-hmm. We want to praise kings and queens, and then ask yourself why. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because there's something in our character that doesn't believe that we can achieve that. So it's nice to get lost in that. I wish I could, live in that palace and castle. And then you go behind closed doors and like, it's really not what it's cracked up to be.
No, I can guarantee that.
Yeah. But
some of the most unhappy people.
But don't demean that either, because that's a real misconception too. Because now then, like, okay, I'm better off living in this way here. At least I can control what I have. I'm like, no, because your life, we don't know where our life's meant to go. Just follow it. But if you have a belief that having a lot of money makes you unhappy, and then part of your story is you're going to come into a lot of money, then you're going to suffer and you're going to try to push away and deny it. It's like denying the lines of a great film that you're about to go into, and your agent's like, if you do this, you can win the Oscar, so to speak. But that's not why we're doing it. I don't like this, I don't like that. I'm like, why? It's a movie. It's not who you are. And so it stops us from expanding in the rate in which we expand, but not from the comparison the way the world thinks we should expand. So you have to learn to discern that as well. And that's where the really intricacy of the world comes in.
And the paradox.
Yeah. And that's why, like, a lot of stories that stand out to me, again, I don't, who knows what's going to happen with my story, but like I talked about this several podcasts ago about Rodriguez, Searching for Sugar Man.
Oh yeah,
where his fame came later in life, and then just the other day, and my wife was teaching Van Gogh, mm-hmm. and she's like, yeah, I had all these high school, especially it sends out more with boys. Some of them like cried when she was doing the presentation.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, when you listen to his story, it's really fascinating. He only sold one painting in his lifetime.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's it. And it was directly based, his brother Theo was younger than him, but he believed him, he loved him. Mm-hmm. But Van Gogh did not think he was a good artist at all, right? Now,
Which is kind of with everything
Yeah.
we know. Well, clearly,
Yeah.
if that's his belief, he would see that reflected to him during
And
his lifetime.
Now, depending on what art history, whoever studied art, he is, for some people, one of the greatest artists that ever lived. But he never experienced that in his lifetime.
He's definitely one of the most well-known and famous.
Yeah, there was a TV series, I think it was called Doctor Who or whatever, and there was a scene in it, Karen showed it to me, and this is where I can understand why the kids got teary-eyed, where he went to a time machine and took Vincent van Gogh back to the Louvre.
How cool.
In modern time. And so he walks in there, and you're walking through, it wasn't the Louvre, it was in Marseille.
Okay.
The d'Orsay. And the d'Orsay, it's a beautiful museum. And just the building itself is a museum, or art.
Work of art.
Yeah, work of art. So he's walking through, and you go through all these rooms with just different artists. And he kept pulling him, he's looking at him, and the guy kept grabbing him. And he walks into this room, and it's a whole dedicated to him.
Yeah.
And he's looking around, and then the guy comes up, and it's a TV show, so they're exaggerating, obviously.
Of course.
Van Gogh didn't come back, but so he's sitting there, and then he pulled over the curator and asked him about Van Gogh, and he's like, he was the greatest artist that ever lived, and he explained because of the colors and this and that, and you see Van Gogh start to tear up because he thought he was useless.
Holy shit.
And that's what's happening to every one of us. That's why when you hear that story, we think we're useless. I'm like, no. What you do on this planet might not be discovered till you're dead, And then my wife goes and shows you, like, with one painting was sold for 37 point something million. Another one, 100. Like,
yeah,
but he sold one
numbers.
painting in his lifetime. I don't even know how much he sold it for.
Probably not a lot.
No.
Yeah.
And so what we do here, if you're trying to get the accolade right in the moment, I'm like, that's not how it works. But again, it doesn't mean you have to wait till you're dead before the information that you put upon the universe and the world will be discovered. That's just one characterization of one, but then you had other artists like say Beethoven, right? Mozart. He knew he was great, but he died broke. Like he died miserable. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but he knew how good he was. Where the other guy died broke, but he just thought he was a failure. It was horrible and
painful.
Yeah. And he just, like, on his dying bed, like he was shot in the chest and the heart and in the stomach. Some say he tried to commit suicide. There's another story out there that says a group of kids did it, but he never turned them in. It doesn't really matter.
That's how Van Gogh died?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he got shot in the field. So some thought he tried to kill himself, which, like, why would you shoot yourself twice?
Yeah, in the chest.
And then in the stomach. Like,
Painful
I think if I
areas.
shot myself in the chest, the gun would have fell to the side.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not really
here to debate that.
No. But there's evidence that believes that. I think the movie with William Dafoe kind of infers that.
That's cool.
But nevertheless, he was apologizing to Theo on his deathbed. His brother made it to his bedside before he died, and he didn't feel like he was worthy of this life, and that in itself was a lie. But he still, this is the brilliance of Van Gogh, though, what I love about it. Regardless of him ever selling a painting, he still fucking painted.
Yeah.
So if you're waiting for an accolade, if you're waiting for something to do what you're doing, this is the lie you're living. This man continued to paint regardless of how he felt when he was thinking, like, I'm not worthy, but he still painted. And, like, think about all the paintings he's done over his lifetime, right? Because, like, there's a whole museum dedicated to him in Amsterdam called the Van Gogh Museum. But then he has art all over the world, and there's a huge collection in the d'Orsay as well. But he kept doing it even though he thought. So keep doing it. But don't think this needs to be seen. And that is the pure life in which we came here to live. You may be noticed in your lifetime. You may not be. That's not why we do it. There were other artists, musicians that played music and we didn't hear about till they're older or died.
Sugar Man,
Yeah.
Great example when you shared that.
Yeah, like, but he still played, he still did it, and, at some point he had to go get a real job and do stuff. But but if you're doing it for the result of the accolade, you're never going to be that good at it. But if you're doing it for the sake of doing it, because there were other people that came along that tried to get him to do his art differently. Van Gogh, and he's like, no, this is what I know. It's like, because,
That's how I do it.
yeah, because some of his early work were like portraits of families and whatever, but then he got into the colorful stuff like the sunflowers and Starry Night and all that stuff. Is kind of muted. It's kind of, it's kind of like glaring your eyes down to where it's not hyper focused, and the lack of hyper focus is what brings out the beauty and stuff.
It brings out the whole.
Yeah, it brings out the whole thing, and that's kind of how he painted. And he would just sit in the field, and people didn't rather like him when he went to certain places because he was a drunk and everything else. But there was something brilliant about what he was doing. So maybe that was the only time he felt the brilliance. That was the only time. That was his meditation, if you will. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if he understood that, he would have maybe not had the other struggle why he wasn't painting. Again, his tragedy was meant to be played out for me to explore. So I thank him for that sacrifice.
Well, and that makes me question myself. Well, what if he, during that time, saw himself in a different light? What type of trajectory would have been the narrative that we remember of Van Gogh?
Yeah, and at times he did. When he was painting those paintings, he had to see himself in a different light. He took what he called the pain and converted it like the lead into gold. But again, there were brief moments, and I think we all question that. So now it's like, okay, when I'm in the pain, how can I convert this pain into something beautiful, right? Now, you don't need to create pain to create something beautiful either. And I think we're in this cycle now of moving out of that. Like, oh, poor me, let me write a love song because I've never experienced love, And I'm like, you could start heading into some other direction. But these stories to me stand out because it's like, okay, I'm going to take the complete tragedy. I'm going to say Van Gogh's life wasn't tragic. It was perceived to be tragic. Was it really tragic? Again,
we don't know.
It's how we tell the narrative of a story, because to me, it wasn't tragic. It was brilliant. Now, he might have felt tragic, and we know that because there's
alcoholism.
There's a lot of letters going back and forth, because back then they didn't have text messaging, and so they had to write long, lengthy letters to his brother Theo and him. So there's a lot of information there based on how they both felt. But I could turn the narrative down and change it, just kind of like in that TV show. I think it's called Doctor Who. I think that was a show. And when he came back and he heard the curator talking about how brilliant it was, in that moment he cried because what he believed about himself he realized was false. And there could have been a moment in time where he did that too. So we always think, oh, it was a tragic life, and we remember him from cutting his ear off. I'm like, really? Like that one moment in time, he had a little misjudgment of cutting his ear off. So where are we individually in that? Are we able to step back and realize, no, I'm going to turn what I just thought was a tragedy into something magnificent.
Miracle.
And nobody else needs to know. Just me and God. Just me and God will know.
And we all have the ability to come from that place.
Yeah.
We all do. It's a we are storytellers.
We wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's what this experience is. You are a storyteller. If you are listening to this episode right now, you are a storyteller. You are the greatest storyteller to ever walk this planet. We're all playing a part of the story you're telling yourself right now as you go through life. The experiences you're having, the family you were born into, the job, the work, the friends, the romance, all of the above. You are writing this story. And that's what's so crazy is when you take a step back, you're like, everything that I've, narrated for the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years, I was, playing a role in that. And that's big, because I know when that clicked for me, I was like, man, I'm writing a story I don't like.
Yeah.
you know? And I was like, I'm going to start writing a story I do like, which is I'm going to go back and you know,
Revise it.
Yeah, revise.
Yeah.
Every single moment in my life that I thought was the worst day of my life or broke me or, you know, was not, you know, beneficial to my story. I went back and I found the light in it. I went back and I found the meaning in it, how it, you know, helped shape me into the individual I am today. And that changed my whole trajectory, my whole past.
Think about it, you don't,
in the moment.
Yeah, it's cool. You don't change the actual story. You change the emphasis on the story.
Correct.
Like I remember once somebody, and it's kind of a play, like, you know, from the Bible when Moses asked, "Who should I tell is telling me this stuff?" And God said,
I am.
I am that I am." Now, if you say, I am, you know, I am that I am that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And if you actually put it, I am that, comma, I am. See how it changed the narrative of that?
Mm-hmm.
Again, you can do it any way you want. But if you just say it in one sentence, you're like, okay, that is bland. But I am that, comma, I am. So whatever I claim to be that, I am. It's another way of looking at it. But I didn't change the words.
Mm-hmm.
I changed the emphasis on the words.
Mm-hmm.
So we going back and revise. We're not like erasing the story. We can't erase what happened, but I can look at it differently. So I can go back into my past and revise how I feel about what happened.
Absolutely.
I'll be delusional to change what happened, but I can look at it differently. Because, like, you know, Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, was tortured in World War II in Germany, as well as a lot of other people. And when he wrote his book, his experience and how he looked at it was different. But he wouldn't knock anyone that looked at their life as tragedy either. It was just, how does somebody... So he stood out to me anyway. Like, okay, how does somebody being tortured and treated the way he was only saw love in the men that were doing it to him?
Mm-hmm.
Not the act, but themselves. Because he saw just kind of like, you know, Christian Bale can see, like Heath Ledger say, I don't know how they were off screen, but when Christian Bale was playing Batman, it was a different story to the Joker.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end, it's like, yo, Batman's really Christian Bale and Joker's really Heath Ledger, and they're probably guys who go out for a beer after the shoot. Mm-hmm. And so Viktor Frankl was able to step into the I am of who he was, see the I am in that German soldier that was doing whatever he was doing to him. But the two characters coming through, so he was able to alleviate himself from the character and see what was happening and seeing the weird, oddly brilliance of it, where other people couldn't. Doesn't mean they were wrong. You know, their experience is their experience. It's like, okay, that's when I read that book, and I'm like, how did this man come to write about this when he was tortured? Because it's easy to write about how great life is when you're going
Things
through
are going great.
Yeah, what we consider to be great. It's when things like aren't. How can I look at this? You know, another story that stands out to me is that woman. I forgot her name, but her son was killed by a gangbanger,
mm-hmm.
and then she finally made the courage to go speak to this guy in prison, and you know, I believe as the story goes that she wanted to tell him how she felt, but the time she got there, she saw she had nothing but love, and over time she kept coming back and had a relationship with him. She spoke to get him in his parole board. He got released, and then she adopted him. And this is the man that killed her son.
Mm-hmm.
And then they traveled around.
I remember that story.
They traveled around talking to gang members and other people and I'm thinking, okay, if this woman can forgive this man, fuck,
mm-hmm.
I can forgive anybody. I'm like,
exactly.
Come on, like how the hell?
That's the lowest of the blow.
Like that's your child that was killed by this
mm-hmm.
individual, and this individual at one point acted like a monster, but now when you see him, he's no longer a monster. So the revision of his story came about in real time.
Well, she gave that gift to him just like he gave that gift to himself.
Yeah, and it's just a weird turn of events. So it's like these are the stories that stand out to me because they're, you know, I'm like, okay, how can I forgive, you know, whatever little stupid shit I'm holding on to?
Yeah, totally.
If they can do that, I can. You know, if Jesus can forgive, you know, Pontius Pilate, if he can forgive the two sinners next to him on the cross, and Judas,
mm-hmm.
you know, well, people are like, well, he's Jesus. I'm like, okay, yeah, I get that. But this woman was just an ordinary woman. And she did. I'm like, Viktor Frankl went in. Yeah, he was a psychologist and stuff, but he went in there and he didn't realize he had it in him till he was in this position, right? Yeah. I'm like, okay, if they can do it, why can't I?
Pretty powerful stuff.
It's very powerful stuff.
You know?
So it's the revision of our story you're holding on to. I'm like, yeah, this thing happened to me. I'm not saying it didn't, but can I look at it differently? And the answer is absolutely yes, but it's up to you to do it. I'm not telling you have to. Because I would hate if someone said I have to.
Well, and we see this all the time with different comedies that become dramas or dramas that become comedies. We've done this throughout history with our writings, you know, and we watch it. And we've seen some great examples of it. And we have that same ability with our life. We just treat it differently.
Yeah.
We treat it like, oh, no, that's different. This is real life.
Yeah,
As if it's different.
Yeah, because instead of trying to change the outside world, like I can't go back and change the circumstance of what happened to me when this happened. But I can go back
and change the narrative.
Look at it differently. Like, I am that, I am. Or I am that, comma, I am. So whatever follows afterwards. And it doesn't matter which way you say it. It just changes the narrative. Like some people might argue over how to say it. I'm like, that's up to you. I don't care. But it can change the narrative without changing. I'm just putting a comma in that sentence rather than leaving it open, you know, running. And it's like, yeah, we can do that. And we do that. You notice things start to change outside of you. But in order to get there, prior to that, you have to go seated with God. So changing the story didn't make Viktor Frankl feel better. He was under so much pressure. He had to go to God. And then from there, the story changed. So this way doesn't work. Don't try to put the cart in front of the horse. Get to the horse first, and the horse will pull the cart wherever you want to go, effortlessly. And so we have to be seated first, and then look out into the out. So we go into like the non-duality and see who we are. Then when you look at the world, it's brilliant. Go there, then pick up the paintbrush, the pen, whatever it is you're going to express out to the world. So that is the why. When I ask why, I want to go right to the source and then express myself out, not try to express myself to find source, right?
Which is how we're taught everything works.
Yeah.
We're taught opposite of how it works, which is get out here and physically make things happen to create something. Yeah,
and what happens is every once in a while you accidentally, not knowingly, fall into source and like, okay, what was I doing when that happened? So then you create like you create a foundation.
You jump on one foot, spin around 2 times before you walk out the door because it's good luck.
And then you try to sell it to everyone. It doesn't work on anyone, by the way. And by the way, it doesn't continue to work on you. And then when you get angry, like, well, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. I'm like, no. I'm like, you try to solidify what you did in that moment to why you got there. It's like, why you got there, what you did is just an expression of it. And if you understood that, I'm like, oh.
Well, we've all seen those books. 5 steps to this, 10 steps to that. We've all read those books.
Yeah.
And then we've all taken those steps. Whoa, why didn't this happen for me?
Yeah,
because those 10 steps were not what did it.
No,
it was that woman or man's state, and those were the steps they happened to take in which they achieved it. But that's not the same for you.
No. Actually, I was just listening to an interview. I don't know how old the interview was. It might have been a little while ago, but it was with Deepak Chopra.
Oh, hell yeah.
And he was talking about, like, he went to school for neuroscience and everything's in college, and then he met up with Maharaj.
Oh, yeah, you sent me this.
I sent it to you.
Yeah, you sent me this.
And he sat with him, and he's, like, talking about the neurons in the brain. He goes, and, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, he's like, it's all a figment of your imagination. He's like, what? Like, you should be studying consciousness, not some made-up thing that humans did. And that's when Deepak had to,
Whoa.
Well, he fully invested himself in, in medicine the way he did. It's like, it's not an easy stepping back from, right?
And hats off to Chopra for having that, because most people would push that away and deny it completely.
Chopra's like, how am I going to make money? He's like, it will find its way to you. And then, but he wrote all these books. And then even, I don't know if it was in that conversation, but then another conversation, he's like, it's like, people like, he goes, the books aren't going to get you there. And he started naming all these books. And then the guy says, yeah, like even your books. He goes, yeah, even my books aren't going to get you there. Like,
That's right.
The guy wanted to make sure you didn't forget about your books.
Just make sure, including yours.
Because the source that we're looking for is in what we call non-duality. We came here to experience the dualistic world as part of an experience, just like going to amusement park. Mm-hmm. And once you start to do that, like life becomes like an amusement park. It's going to rain. Things go up, things go down. That's what happens in the physical world. But at the quantum level, things are happening completely different. So we come into this quantum field of energy. All right. Yeah. I could sit there and hold my phone up here and let go of it and drop it. And I could wish for the whole world that it won't hit the table, but that's the physical world I'm in. Mm-hmm. The question is, why am I dropping it? To prove a point. But if I kept doing it 100 times and 100 times based on the field of energy and gravity we're in, which we agreed to be in, it may not be empirical in the whole totality of existence, but it's empirical. It's true now, and I'm not going to try to defy it. Mm-hmm. So if I keep doing that, I'm going to have to buy a new phone. So this practical living doesn't go away by any means. What I'm talking about. So there's still logic here, but we must go in first and then express out. So, by learning how to get your nervous system settled, like balanced, right? So once I learned to balance my nervous system, what I put out into the world becomes more, it becomes a pattern, say it's an interference pattern, but it's constructive rather than deconstructive, right? So, okay, like everyone out there knows, like you got these patterns that are interfering with each other, and there's nothing wrong with that. But some are constructive, where it's a building, and some are deconstructive. I want to stay away from deconstructive, but the deconstructive can show me how to get into constructive. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is where the maybe good and bad came from, right? Yeah. We recognize what's working. We work like humans recognize what's working, what isn't working. But it's not what I did. It's not that I was playing, like I got into a band with people, and it wasn't that I was playing the E chord wrong. It's just my timing was wrong when I entered into the song with E chord. Mm-hmm. So, okay, it's the E chord's wrong. I'm like, I'm going to C chord. I'm like, no, it wasn't the E chord. It was your timing. It wasn't what you did. It was how you did it and the timing in which you did it. So now you're going to try to eliminate and say it has to happen this way. And then if it's not working, there's something out the outside. We'll have to go fix it.
And that's us choking out, trying to fix
everything. But if
everything.
you just listen to the drummer or the bass player, you just, one, and then, now I know where to enter in with the E chord. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, I have to go into the field first, and then, so I have to set up the field in my heart. What field am I going to be into? Like, how much can I open my heart? How much frequencies can I? I'm like, I don't know. But I know when my heart starts to close just a little bit, I know, okay,
I can tell.
I don't blame somebody outside of me. It might be a knee-jerk reaction based on my past beliefs, but they're starting to be washed away. I realize there's no one out there to blame. But when I let go of that, the heart starts to open up a little. I'm like, okay, there's freaking truth here. Mm-hmm. This real physical truth here. And that's when the brilliance of life starts to open up. It's like, wow.
I like that you brought up the quantum side of things too, because I don't think that's discussed enough just in our experience. We're taught that we live in, this very classical physical or classical physics, world, which we do. I'm not denying that, absolutely. But it's this and that. We also live in a quantum world, and we've seen this number of times by things that we call miracles. We have all heard, seen, experienced, witnessed, whatever you want to say, some sort of thing that we can't explain, that it's like, wow, that's not normal. That shouldn't have happened, or that's different. That's the quantum.
Yeah.
This is around us too. It's not just this physical, classical sense of A plus B equals C, or this must be done before that. Like, sure, those exist, and those are common, and that's the case. But there's this quantum aspect to this living, and it's in the quantum that, like, you could never fathom how this would work out, but it does, or that opportunity would open up, or that door would open. That's the quantum, things that we can't explain, that like, how the hell would that have happened?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it actually makes a great point for what we're talking about today. So if you start looking at the Newtonian physics, like classic physics.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Newtonian.
Yeah. So you look at Newtonian physics, and then you look at classic physics. Quantum physics. Quantum physics would be the horse. Newtonian classics would be the cart. All right. So when we start asking why, we're actually entering into the field, and this is metaphorically. So when we ask the question why, we're actually entering into the field of the quantum to explain the Newtonian. Right? So first we recognize the Newtonian. The apple falls from the tree and hits down, and he tries to understand how gravity is and how things work. I'm like, yeah, just because quantum physics came out and changed, Einstein came and changed the pattern of how gravity works, it doesn't mean the apple doesn't fall, still falls from the tree and hits him in the head. It still works. But now the deeper rooted meaning of why is changed, and that could even be worked out. But in the quantum field, it's why, and we could keep asking why in the quantum field and never come up with a true causation. We could come up with deep correlations, but that keeps it open for the wondrous and the unexplored universe that we're in. Because if there was a time in science where it was like in the late 1800s where since Newton came along and had these brilliant ideas and put out there, so all these students would go to college and university to study Newton, and all of a sudden it came to a point where well, let's just stop. Science is done. We have calculus, we have all these other equations and stuff like that, and they literally there was a group of people that were we're done, and based on what they were looking we haven't expanded since Newton. What are we doing here, right? And then all of a sudden quantum physics came in. Boom. Yep. Opened up the story, the story doesn't end.
Changes it all.
It's kind of like these Marvel movies.
Yeah,
they just never end.
Let's see another one.
Yeah, it's holy shit, there's another one.
Yep.
I don't remember that guy from the comic books, but
but it's funny because that's so important to recognize, because there's something inherent about the human experience where we don't like not knowing, we don't like the unknown. We need to know, and so we're trying to close it out as if we know. But the quantum realm, this quantum experience, there are infinite numbers of possibilities, let's just say, and it's in that where we can't say, oh, this is it every time, or that we can't put our thumb over quantum. We can put it over the what's the word? What's the word?
Oh, Newtonian physics.
Newtonian, thank you.
Classic,
we can and say, hey, nope, that won't work, etc. We can't do that with quantum, and so it's weird that we're not taught about it, or it's not often discussed, is because it's not black and white.
Yeah. Well, there's a variable in quantum physics. One of the first experiments they've done, or one of the ones that stand out to me anyway, is the double slit experiment.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Right. And this is actually done in 1801 by this guy named Thomas Young,
and it's been done several times since.
Yeah, but back then all he had was curtains and a mirror, so he didn't have any technology yet. And so the idea was that light was a wave, right, or a particle. So which one is it? Well, what we're finding out, and again, I'm giving a gross interpretation, so I'm not a physicist myself, but what changes the outcome from a wave to a particle is the person doing the experiment in their insistence on how they look at it. So
the observer changes everything. So how do I go into something with a complete open mind and open heart to have very little change in it? The trick is you can't. It's like the guy that goes down into the Amazon he heard about a tribe of people that never experienced anyone outside their tribe. Maybe some guy was walking by the woods and glanced and just took off, So he's there, and then it's hey, you want to do a really good documentary? Go down there. But the second the camera guy was noticed by the indigenous people that he was recording, they are no longer the people in which he came. Yep.
They're completely changed forever. Completely changed. So every time we step into a puddle, the ripple happens. You can't step into a puddle without the ripple. You change it forever. But that's part of this magnificent world. All right. But how can I, am I able to walk on the water? Can I make a slight ripple, or do I have to make a really gross splash? Right. Again, it seems everyone's walking towards that. How can I touch the water with very little ripple. That seems to be efficiency.
Well, and I also want to touch on your point of, it's the observer who says this is a particle or this is a wave, and then they experience it that way. So let's just, for a gross interpretation sense, say, okay, well, what if we're observing for something to work out, or if we're observing saying to ourselves, this could never work out.
Kind of like how politics do it.
Exactly.
So,
so it's like we're feeding the observation to go down the path in which we,
that's why,
what do you want to experience?
That's why, like, when I listen to people debate over stuff, their objectiveness into the argument is they believe it, and then the other person, they believe it. And it's kind of like they're fighting. But what happens, I look at it, I'm like, if they swap sides and had the goal to do that, they can narrow and break them both down, because these arguments are broken down because these are individual experiences where they're trying to fight for your and I's idea. And I'm like, I'm going to have nothing to do with that.
Yep.
Nothing to do
with
it.
Well, that's what debate class showed everybody too.
Game, it's a no-win game. Like, there's no winning that game. It's just continuous down the path of that game. Now, there is something that the game is trying to do. It's trying to unite people onto an idea. So I once heard this. I think it was Alan Watts said. I think it was Alan Watts, but he says he said a lot of shit. My God, I can sit here all day talking about what
he
Alan
did.
Watts.
I love Alan,
but he's like, it's not about. It's about not thinking alike, but knowing alike, and allowing ourselves in the knowing to think differently. That expands this beautiful tapestry. So if you're looking at a painting, every stroke has to be different in order to create the whole painting. But if every stroke was the same, you would have a blue canvas, no dimension, no contrast, no nothing.
And what's the fun in that?
Well, that's a one-dimensional world.
Or what's the beauty in that?
That's a two-dimensional world that we already came out of. Maybe at that time it was cool, like, oh, got the blue wall going. Now we're in this multi-dimension, the 3 dimensions with space and then time. Let's throw time in there. It's like, it's like I have to cover these 3 dimensions in a certain amount of time. Like, oh yeah, the clock is ticking, baby. And then, but you can get out of that. You can have fun in it. So still run the race. Still get the report in by Friday. But by knowing time doesn't really exist, you can actually go in there in the quantum field and slow down time in order to get the report on your boss's desk in time and have fun with it. It doesn't mean you go out into the woods and with a tambourine and be done with it. If you were meant to be in finances, go for it. Be in finances, right? Because even the poor...
Oh, you can be the most awake and conscious human being and still be a CPA or an accountant.
Absolutely. Now you're just working with the field and have fun with it rather than have misery with it. Yeah, because because everyone that condemns people like with a lot of money, I'm like, you don't condemn them. You only condemn when they're not your friend.
Yeah, right.
Like, if you're like, because these people, like, I find it funny. These politicians talk about billionaires. Meanwhile, they have billionaire friends, but they're talking about the billionaires they don't like.
Exactly.
So, but when you say billionaires, you're better off talking about the individual person. Stop leaving their bank account out of it.
Yeah, right.
Like, it sounds weird when you say that. I'm like, that, like, do you?
You're alienating a whole group of your own friends and supporters.
Yeah. Oh, they're different. Like,
They're
no,
different.
like, well, you want be more specific. And then explain why, and then why does that bother you? And you'll be dumbfounded by the end of the day, so you'll stop doing that. But that's their gig. That's their game. I don't knock them for it.
That's exactly it.
It's like watching Three Stooges when I was a kid.
The whole point is to bring awareness to this game.
Everything is.
Because when you have the awareness, now we're participating.
Yep. Yeah, because if we got rid of the politicians and stuff like that, okay, again, now we're trying to make the world a better place so I can feel better. Now I become the tyrant. No, I'm like,
or the fascist.
Yeah, it's a game. It's a game I used to follow. It's a game I'm aware of. I don't knock it, but it's a zero-sum game. In the end of it, like, it really isn't. Maybe this whole life is a zero-sum game, but I want to feel good while I'm playing the game.
Oh yeah,
because that's my expressiveness of the world.
And as you start to play the game from this level of awareness, when having this level of awareness, there is no doubt you will see opportunity, experience things where it's undeniable. You're going, oh my God, no, this was me participating in this.
Yeah.
No longer is the world happening to you, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and you can be a politician having these debates, but when you leave the stage, you don't hate the person you have to debate with. That is happening too. It's very difficult to tell. Like, I wonder if like all these people, when they're done debating, they go, hey, let's go get a beer.
Yeah, right.
So, all right, okay, they're playing the game. What they're doing is they're teaching us not to, so there's some play there. There's something there that is worth having. I'm like, we should get rid of this. I'm like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get bothered by it. It'll just disappear on you.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'll see it differently. You'll look at it differently. Viktor Frankl wasn't wishing these German soldiers to go to hell. Like, he wasn't wishing them away.
Mm-hmm.
But by going and seated, his suffering diminished. Yeah, he was feeling the pain in his body. Like, we have nervous system. That's not going to go away. Mm-hmm. But pain and suffering do not need to be synonymous.
Exactly.
They don't. Yeah.
This is a great episode, Frank. I love diving into this. We appreciate you guys tuning in to this week. We will be back next week. We actually have a cool surprise for next week's episode. We'll leave it, there. We'll dive into that next week. But we hope everyone had a great Easter. We hope everybody liked what they were listening to today. If you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Perspective Shift Now. Like and subscribe. And then keep in mind, every first Monday of the month, we're going to be doing a live YouTube event. So if you guys have time at 9:30 MST, Mountain Standard Time.
Or Arizona time.
The Arizona time. Good call.
Yeah, just check that out.
Just Google Arizona time.
Yeah, because we don't have daylight savings. So right now we're in Pacific time. So.
Are we? Oh, shit.
Yeah, because we're
know.
in California.
Okay.
That's why it is technically Mountain Standard Time, but when it's in the summer months, we're actually same time as California.
Interesting. Okay, so Google Arizona time.
Yeah.
Yep. So 9:30. Follow us there. Come in. You get to interact with us. Ask us questions in real time. We love doing that. So that won't be next episode, but it'll be the following because it's going to be the first Monday of every month. That's something Frank and I wanted to start doing just so we could interact with you guys on a more personal level.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Much love and peace out.
See you next week.
All right.